Everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Big Men on Betting. It's Thursday, October 20th, and it's week 8 in college football, week 7 in the NFL. And, I've been noticing on Twitter the double vodka Don, Big Ev, has been fucking murdering it. So I thought, you know what? We got to get him on this show because we know what we do on this show. It's straight knowledge, it's straight betting. We got Big Ev here. Big Ev, I don't know where to start with you because you have been crushing it, quite frankly. And I've always known you were a great betting mind, but you're having a hell of a year, bro.
Appreciate that. NFL has been great. College has been up and down a little bit, but NFL has definitely been strong. I think I don't know, just seeing the board well, just trying to just lock in, really focus, dive deep. It's been good though, just trying to keep it rolling. Never.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and on this show, we talk a lot of college. We mix in the NFL, but it's straight football all the time. What we have right now in sports is great. The equinox, as they call it, which I never knew they called it that. I never heard that until recently. But you got all the four sports. You got football, basketball, hockey, college football. In 2 weeks, college basketball. You got 5 sports all in one. It's just a great time of the year. We deserve this. It's been a wild couple of years. We've had it's been a long summer. We'll have the World Cup this year. There's a lot of stuff to wet your whistle with. You're about to head to LSU, Louisiana State University. They've got a huge game against Ole Miss. There's a lot of people going, from what I understand. Obviously, the college football crew, the college football show. Kelly in Vegas, I'm sure, will be there with Megan. Is Ben Mintz going? I have to imagine he'd be there.
He's going to. Rowan's been doing these events at different casinos, so I believe he's going to Blackhawk, which I believe is the Colorado casino. But tomorrow, I guess we've done a huge renovation in the LaBerge casino, which is the Baton Rouge one. Yep. So I think tomorrow's like the official cutting the ribbon opening for the Baton Rouge Barstool Sportsbook. Their old casino. The casino's been there a long time. I've heard it's beautiful. One of their better locations. So I'm excited. I haven't been to one yet. I haven't been to an official Penn Sportsbook yet. So very, very excited. We're flying out tomorrow morning, doing the ribbon cutting there, then doing college football show Saturday, going to the game. Never been to LSU. Very, very excited. I mean, everyone's told me it's like the best number one college football atmosphere. So very excited to go to Death Valley. Super fired. I had it circled on the calendar all year.
It's going to be quite the game, too. I mean, Ole Miss is really coming into their own. Yeah, it's going to be terrific. So, again, make sure you check out Barstool College Football Show. I want to welcome everybody in. Ev, we had to get him on, as I said. He's killing it. And we're going to jump right in, as we normally do. Let me ask you quickly, though, Ev, how are you with the other sports? Do you bet NBA? Do you bet NHL? Are you just a football kind of guy? What are your betting scenarios that you're looking at?
I would definitely say football is what I'm best at. Football is definitely my bread and butter. Football is what I bet the most on in terms of my units change significantly, probably sport to sport. Football is what I bet the most on. Football is what I pride myself on the most for sure. I like betting college basketball a lot as well. That's probably my next favorite after pro and college football. Love MMA as well. Biggest card of the year actually tomorrow for that. So NBA I'll get in on more later in the season. College basketball is what I like more the regular. I just like the college basketball regular season more. I think it's a little more entertaining, shorter games. NBA can drag a little bit, but I will bet some NBA. I like betting baseball a lot too in the summer. But baseball is one of those where once the summer ends, fall comes in, you're like, oh, this is why football is really better.
That's how I do it as well.
Baseball is just the only thing on in the summer, but I've had some success betting baseball as well. I like baseball.
Well, I got to tell you, yesterday, if you had the Phillies first 5, that is a brutal beat. They're up 4-0. You think Nola's at the helm. This is beautiful. Padres can't score. Just a wild inning, and that one goes down in flames. But I do want to ask you quickly on the Ultimate Fighting, Islam Makhachev, who, look, I have a rule, Ev, and I mean this. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone from Russia, Dagestan, or Chechnya ever lose. Now, when we look at Islam Makhachev, obviously Dagestani, the best. Charles Oliveira, what do you like here? Jack Mack says that he's all over Islam. What are your thoughts?
This is tough for me because Charles Oliveira is someone I have so much respect for. He's just this is a kid from the favelas, from nothing, that came in the UFC at 20, 21 years old, took some losses, took some bumps, for a long time was referred to as a quitter, that he didn't have it, and has just risen up past that. And it's almost like we've kind of, as an MMA fan, UFC fan, we watched this kid go from a boy to a man. We watched him literally come up to where his last 4 or 5 fights, everyone, oh, he's a quitter. You can break him. He gets hit. He comes back. He hits you. He submits you. He knocks you out. He's a special talent who I think is really hitting his peak, his prime right now. His confidence is through the roof. I think he fully believes he's going to win this fight. But these Russian guys is scary. Listen, Islam is he Khabib? I don't think he's Khabib, but he is, God rest his soul, Khabib's father's favorite student. Just his strength is just unbelievable. His wrestling's unbelievable. I don't know what to bet in this fight. I'm such a fan. I might not take anything in this fight, to be honest. Just watch. I'm just such a huge fan of both of them. My heart, I want Charles to win with everything in my body. I just love his story. I love his mentality, his attitude, which is what he's came from to where he is now. But like you said, just betting against Dagestanis is just not a profitable proposition at all. And I think so. I guess if I was going to break down the fight itself, I would say if Islam's going to win this fight, it's probably going to be a more, what fans might call a more boring fight. I think he wins without a top control, the heavy wrestling, but Charles is a different animal because his submission jiu-jitsu are so strong that you never want to leave yourself in a bad spot. I mean, we've never seen Islam really do that. The only fracture he has at all in his record is early in his UFC career, he got clipped with a big shot and got knocked out. Some could say the stoppage was early. He got hit pretty hard. It was a big shot. But it's interesting because I do think Charles has the advantage on the feet, but the strength advantage I think will be with Islam, and that's what he's going to try to use to win the fight. It's like gun to my head, I think Islam probably does win, but I'll really be rooting for Charles. And I think you're seeing the respect they're giving Charles, where Islam, his whole UFC career, I mean, his lines are on 400, 500, almost every fight. And he's minus about 180, 190 right now. So they're giving Charles some respect that he's the real deal, and that if you make one mistake with him, I mean, it's over. Like he'll snatch your neck up, choke you out. He just came out the fight with Gaethje, who's a slugger. Gaethje said Charles was the hardest he's ever been hit in his life. Very technical, but yeah, if I was my head would say take Islam. It's just that these guys, they just don't lose very often. He's a phenomenal talent.
Currently at Barstool Sportsbook, Islam 165. Numbers
Wow.
continuing to come down.
Wow.
A lot of people giving Charles Oliveira a lot of credit. And, you have a guy, Leighton, in the chat saying Oliveira should be favorite. The odds are wrong. I don't know about that. I think you're always going to give the edge to Islam in this type of fight. But listen, if I ever have a free hour, I'm going to look into the history of Russian fighters and how often they lose. It can't be it's very rare. I don't know if I can remember the last time a Russian fighter lost at any rate.
So we actually had he's back in college now. So for Spin It Back, was our producer Lee, very good MMA mind as well.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What happened to that guy? I was wondering where
he's a college football player still. He plays at Ithaca, so he hadn't graduated yet. So he went back to schoul. He's still helping us out. So he had a funny stat he would keep up with where I guess Makachev, I don't believe, would fall into this technically, but it was like a Medov, or like if you have like a Magomed or a Medov in your last game, it was like your winning percentage is like 85% or something. It was really crazy. And it was over like a 50, 65 sample size, pretty big sample size.
Wow.
But Makachev, he doesn't have the Medov or whatever, but he still falls in the same boat. I mean, this guy has literally been Khabib's protege. Like I said, his father, he's passed, unfortunately. His father's favorite student, has literally been in the corner for Khabib for all his big fights, all these big moments. Like, I do believe he's ready for this, as much as, unfortunately, I am kind of rooting against him just because I'm such a big Charles Oliveira fan. But he's ready for this. I don't think he's gonna fall into the bright lights. The only knock you can have on Islam is that he hasn't fought the top guys yet. Like, he kind of he's made this big jump where he's been so dominant, where his best fights or wins have really been Thiago Moises is a guy who's not ranked right now. Dan Hooker, who's had took the fight on short notice, a lot of losses, and Bobby Green, another guy not ranked, a lot of losses, and took it on short notice as well. So that's kind of been the knock on him, but he has been so dominant, where Charles I almost think has kind of become America's sweetheart, even as a Brazilian, because he's just chopped off all the American stars' heads like back to back, just Ferguson, Chandler, Gaethje, Poirier, like just back to back to back to back to
But
back.
now you're stepping up.
But this is a different. Islam's a different animal.
Yep.
Like they can't wrestle and they don't have the strength that he does.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a guy. Like, but Charles, I will say, like he just all he needs is an inch. That's the one thing I would say with Charles is you give him 1 inch, he lands one big punch. You give up that neck for just a second, it's like that. So I mean, I think that's why the betting odds they're giving Charles some respect because they know how dangerous he is. I mean, he's saying round 1 KO, and he's saying with a dead serious look on his face, like he means business. He really is.
It's going to be fascinating. It's enough to make you want to buy the fight. I will say I've always been fascinated by those Caucasus regions like Dagestan, Chechnya, and the fact that they teach the kids to fight literally from birth, right? And you have all these incredible legends. You mentioned Dan Hooker quickly. The only thing I remember about Dan Hooker is Hasbullah made that video where he goes, Dan Hooker, listen to me, my brother. I smash you. Be careful. I always remember that. But great stuff, Ev. That's why I like having you on about UFC because you really know your stuff. It sounds like it's going to be a great fight. Could be a little value. It doesn't seem like you're interested in betting it. I think it's a really tough kind of flip almost. But let's get into football. And we got 2 games tonight. I want to just jump right off of college. Georgia Tech, Virginia, I'm not interested in whatsoever. Okay, you have 2 bad football teams. You got to admit, I've been extremely disappointed with Virginia. I mean, you remember at one point last year, we heard that Brennan Armstrong and this team, they were high level, scoring a lot of points. They just can't get out of their own way this year. And Georgia Tech, new coach, kind of a mess. This is a complete skip for me. No interest. I guess I lean Virginia just because – I don't think Georgia Tech warrants having 3 points at home. That is not a 3-point home and field advantage. You have any thoughts on this game at all?
Yeah, I'm actually, I like action. I'm probably a little less disciplined than you are. I'll play Virginia small. I agree with you, and I do agree with you. So it's one of those, like, Virginia's one of those teams, they've been very frustrating. Really the one time that I bet on them pretty big, they had come through for me was the Syracuse game. And even that was like pulling teeth. I mean, they did everything they could to not win that game, and then finally were able to come through in the second half a little bit. That watching their offense is just so frustrating sometimes because you see that like you said, they brought back almost the whole team. I know they lost the offensive line, which I think was a big factor, but the skill positions were pretty much all there. Same quarterback who put up massive numbers, and you're just looking around like what happened, like what changed that you just were putting up 400, 500 yards a game. And now you're struggling to pick up first downs.
Yes.
But I agree with you that I don't think Georgia's actually laying points. Like, I mean, they're not very good. The home field's almost nothing. So yeah, I'm playing Virginia +3 small.
I mean, I guess maybe we look at the fact that they moved on from Bronco Mendenhall to Tony Elliott. I don't know. It's messy, surely, but yeah, not a game I think we're real invested in. I will say, though, that tonight there's a team that plays that I've been very invested in. I love this South Alabama team. I really do. I think really on that side of the Sun Belt, they are the cat's meow. I look at the other side, obviously Coastal, James Madison, Old Dominion are all tough, but this South Alabama team is really good. Carter Bradley, who I didn't like at Toledo, has actually been really good down at South Alabama. They're at home here. You look at the fact of both these defenses. I think South Alabama's got a damn good pass defense. And you look at the fact that Troy has some real question marks at quarterback. Last game, Gunnar Watson went out with an injury. They're a full-time quarterback. The backup is Jared Doge, who has been all over the place. Jared Doge was at Bowling Green. He was at West Virginia. Then he went to West Kentucky. Now he's at Troy. Just all over the place. What does that correlate to me? He's not a good quarterback. It's pretty simple. You don't move 4 different times if you're a good quarterback. I just look at this game and I say to myself, this team has been good to me. I think they're really talented running the ball and throwing the ball. And I really like Carter Bradley. I think they're the better football team here. I think they come out and get the job done tonight. I like South Alabama in this spot here. I really do.
Yeah, I do as well. I agree. I like South Alabama. It's like they've had some performance, even like the last loss to UCLA aged incredibly well. There's a tough team. They play tough defense. tough to score on. I wouldn't be shocked, obviously, with low score. It's a low total. I think it's like 47 or something like that. But I like South Alabama.
I think you made a good point too, and if not for that stupid fake field goal, South Alabama could have won.
For
Maybe.
sure. I mean, they should have won that game realistically.
yeah,
UCLA was very lucky to get out of there with a win. Very
yeah,
lucky.
absolutely. And as you said, when you look at kind of like how that's looked down the road, like it wasn't a team that ended up losing the next 3 games. UCLA is really good.
Yep.
And we're going to get into them. Someone's talking about it's pronounced Daggy. Whatever. Who cares? He's not Goody. That's all that matters.
If he was good, we would know his name was pronounced.
Right. Exactly. One game on Friday that I think is important. Temple Tulsa, I don't care. By the way, I don't know how Temple gave up 70 points. It was like a somewhat close game. And then I see UCF as 70 points. I'm like, Christ. Temple is really bad. Really bad. Let me ask you, UAB Western Kentucky. I was a big West Kentucky guy last year. Loved Zappy. And listen, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I've talked about Zappy since Houston Baptist. I just did. But UAB is kind of that run first, really good defensive team, kind of a clash in styles here. This is a big game as well. Conference USA, 2 really good football teams. Some really always wants me to take that good defensive team, that team that can really get the job done on defense. I don't like Austin Reed as much as I like Zappy. I like the Blazers here, UAB. Any quick thoughts here? This is kind of one of those Friday night Conference USA CBS Sports types of games.
Yeah, it was one I've been back and forth on. I know it's the line it was 2.5. Immediately came back down to 1.5. That made me pause a little bit. UAB just kind of like you said, they kind of have that makeup to match up with a team like this to make it tough on them. It's one of those. I'm such a fan of Western Kentucky. I love what they do. I do like Austin Reed. I agree he's not Zab, but he has played really well. Yeah, I think the UAB probably is the right play. Just stylistically, I think it makes they're kind of a similar team. Even last year, that would kind of give Western Kentucky trouble a little bit. Like it's a defense, they want to run the ball. I think it's UAB is probably the right side. I'm undecided, but that's probably where I'm leaning right now.
We don't give these teams enough credit. They are always at the top of this conference.
Yep.
Always. And it's just that simple. Now with Marshall kind of not around, this is a really interesting conference all of a sudden. So that's your kind of look at Thursday, Friday. Oh, quickly ask before we move on to Saturday and get into the big games. This NFL game tonight, another very, let's be honest, lackadaisical type of game here. Arizona and the Saints. Kind of similar to the game we just talked about. Arizona kind of up tempo, throw a lot. I'm going to keep saying it. I agree 1,000%. Ever since I saw that Jason Brown video where he really picked apart Kyler Murray, I look at him and I say to myself, my God, this guy is a complete mess as a quarterback. There's not a ton of weapons now that Marquise Brown is out. I think this Arizona team is just not good. I think defensively they suck. And the Saints are a team that I kind of look at and they say, well, I know they're the better defense, surely. But I also don't like their quarterback situation. We all know his issues at quarterback. By the way, I wanted to say this publicly. I heard there was a crab shortage. Have we looked into Jameis Winston as a suspect in that at all? Or did you hear about the crab shortage going on? Yeah,
I didn't.
There's a large. I'm not kidding. There's like a billion crabs have just disappeared. It's very odd. But I was curious about maybe he was a suspect. That said, Saints have corners out. There's all sorts of issues. Are you betting this game? No, right?
I am. I always bet these prime times. The one thing that's been pretty good to me, which I've been lucky enough to be kind of on the right side when not to pick these spots. But these primetime unders, these Thursday unders have just been a cash cow. The teams. I've heard you talk about it with the Thursday. I mean, the teams don't have enough time to prepare. They're so banged up from Sunday. I mean, they both. I mean, Arizona got the shit beat out of them physically on Sunday. Saints just totally blew that game against Cincinnati. So I do like the under. I'm gonna play the Saints. I bought the hook to 3. I just think I know Lattimore's out and that hurts. They've had some tough times against some number 1 receivers, which Arizona does get Hopkins back tonight. I'm curious to see how much he plays or if he's just be like full go. Obviously, because Hollywood Brown's out. Saints have kind of been weird because it's funny because we thought about these Saints teams the last couple years as like not the greatest offense, but these like hard hitting, good defense, low scoring. They've been in these shootouts the last few weeks, so I think it's going to be a different game today. Arizona plays terrible at home. They lost 8 straight home games. Also, on the other side, I mean, I know Dalton's kind of got the Kirk Cousins treatment that he's terrible in primetime, blah, blah, blah. I think this is a big Taysom Hill game. I think he comes in, plays a lot of quarterback, runs a lot of that wildcat type thing. I'm going to go with the Saints the under here. I probably like the under a little bit better. But I'm going to play the Saints +3 in the under, 44.
43.5 still a good number, right?
Yep.
Because you're under that, you're still above that 42 mark, a 23-20 game, 21-17, which I could very much see. I mean, would it surprise you at all tonight if Arizona just can't move the ball because of Kyler Murray's inability to read a defensive? I know they've won a little high scoring recently, but Dennis Allen, what they do on that side, I know he's going to have a better group of corners to throw against, but to me, I also just, this Cardinal team's weird, man. They're really good on the road, but they're not good at home. It's just a really weird game. And as you just kind of alluded to, it's become clear people don't want to play Thursday night. They just don't. No. It's a shitty product. And Hopkins back tonight, isn't he?
Yes. Yep, he is.
Yeah. That'll be nice.
And trouble for Arizona. I'm not a big video game guy, but Emrag told me a new Call of Duty came out.
I'm not. What do you mean?
So it was a big thing. I don't know if you in the offseason, a little joke that Murray's like he's on the FaZe clan, this big
oh really?
He's big video game guy, and so I don't know if you remember this when he signed the big contract in the summer. There was a stipulation about he had to do X amount of film study, X amount of this, and it was really partly because and then he threw a big hissy fit about it. They took the language out of the contract because he was getting trolled on social media, being like, "Oh, like you like video games more than you like football."
Wow, I didn't hear about this.
He's very big into video games. He loves video games.
I see.
So that's kind of been the poking fun at him. Like he's like, new Call of Duty maps out. Like he's gonna be like he's gonna be playing Xbox and not watching film. Blah blah blah.
How did I not hear about this? That seems really interesting, especially with obviously. Well, how did I not know about that? Crazy.
Yeah, it was big.
He's probably tired.
When he signed the new contract, he was getting a lot of shit about the stipulation that it was like, because there were people coming up being like, we've never seen this language in the contract right. Where he must do X hours of film study. He must be at the facility like this X amount of time. Very interesting. But he might be
a little tired today.
He went nuts about it. And they took it out. So it clearly got to him. It clearly struck a nerve.
Doesn't he read you, though, as a kind of guy that's like in 2 or 3 years, he's probably like out of the league and just playing video games? I mean, he's not that good a quarterback, obviously. I mean,
he's also just he's interesting because he shows you those flashes. Like, say, for example, like the end of that Raiders game.
Yes.
He shows you those flashes where like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, this guy can be incredible. But then he shows you the games like last week where you're like, wow, this guy stinks.
There's no consistency with him ever. And look, I also hate Kingsbury. I think he's awful. He's a bad coach. It's just that simple. Plus, they're not good at home. He's a shitty favorite. It's just a bad game to bet on. Just no interest. Let's get to Saturday. Let's move the nonsense. Let's get to Saturday. By the way, Ev, someone's in the comment section saying, Team Minahan against Team Conmen. Tell Jeff D. Lowe to make it happen. Imagine the amount of views. Yes, it would be quite entertaining. By the way, Ev, I got to tell you, you've had a good month, dude. At least the last calendar month. You killed it on trivia. I didn't know you were smart as you were. No offense. I didn't know you knew some of those things. Some of those pulls you had were very impressive. Good
I watched college basketball. I watched college basketball for a long time. I've just been, sports is the one thing. Like, see, and I'll say this as this little background on me. I guess as a kid growing up, I basically wanted to be. If you asked me what I wanted to be when I was like 15 years old, I would have told you I wanted to be Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith. I just wanted to be a sports talking head, debating. That was the only thing I ever loved to do. The only thing I loved watching, participating in. Obviously, I'm older now. I'm not playing high school football anymore. I'm watching them, breaking it down. So it was one of those things as a kid, my parents were like, you need to find other hobbies. And I was like, this is the only thing I'm into. So sports is up my alley. Anything else I struggle with a little bit, but sports question, I'm usually pretty solid. I can at least give you an idea or got something in my mind.
I mean, no offense to Gay Pat, who I'm a big fan of, but you're a major upgrade over him on that team. I mean, that's going to be a tough team to beat. I'm not afraid to say it. Listen, I know we're the. By the way, Jeff D'Lo making us wait this long to play. I know we're an expansion team, but we're going to surprise some people. Your team is really good. I think we all know that. Let's get into the games though, and I want to start with your team, Ohio State. They're huge favorites, over 4 touchdowns. Which I got to admit, when I first saw this line, I know it's Iowa, and look, maybe I'm a bit stubborn with this team. Okay, maybe I am, just because I do think defensively they're really solid. And I look at Ohio State and I say, well, I've said before very openly, I think this is the best offense I've seen in years in college football. The fact that, you've done a lot of this without Jackson Smith and Jigba. You've done certain things without Henderson, who wasn't at certain games. Marvin Harrison Jr. the fact that he's your number 2 kind of receiver is wild to me. By the way, we don't talk enough about Marvin Harrison Sr. off the field. I have some stories about him, and they would very much surprise you. This is not the stage for that, though. That being said, this offense is just incredible. I just think this is one of those games where Iowa can't keep up. That is such a poor quarterback group. They just can't move the ball, but they have covered a lot of these games against Ohio State. I know last year was a blowout. What do you think about this game? It's a tough betting game, but did it strike you as high or no?
No, it was kind of what I expected. I mean, I don't plan on laying the points to Ohio State. I definitely don't plan on trying to catch them with Iowa either. That's for damn sure. But I mean, I think do I think we cover? I mean, good chance. I don't me just being like a real fan. I try, like, when I'm like, sometimes with these like a game like this, I'll try to just so I can watch it as a fan. Just say let's go win this game. The one thing I will say with this team that I've been the most happy about is that our defense has looked so much better.
Yep.
And I think that's huge for us, because I mean that's been what's hurt us that's been what's kept us from winning national titles the last few years. So I'm hoping that's the difference. That's honestly really a big factor in why I do think Ohio State should cover, is that I just can't see how Iowa scores more than 14 points, even in like later, like garbage time. Like I was lucky enough, I got to see Iowa. Well, lucky enough is maybe a stretch, but got to see Iowa play in person. They are just dreadful. I mean, the game I went to is they played Iowa State. They literally blocked a punt in the first drive. Within 2 plays, scored a touchdown from the 15. They did not score again. They are just abysmal. They have no weapons you need to worry about. No, Petrus is just god awful. I'm telling you, their best player, the player that they were most excited about to get on the field, was their punter. On my mother's life, they love their punter, and that should tell you everything you need to know about this team. Listen, I love Iowa, great city. They had a great time there, but this football team is. Iowa's kind of always the same team, but they're a lesser team than they are even, I think, the last few years. This is not one of their best.
Well, I've done a lot of shit even today about Iowa, just because I've talked very openly recently on our college hoops podcast about McCaffrey in basketball. I think he's an awful coach. When we look at football, they're just the same team every year. And I want to give them more respect, because I do think defensively they've been relevant for years, and
Sure.
They always find a way to be a relevant football team. But you're right. I think abysmal is a great word for this team. They are abysmal. That being said, I see Ohio State at 39.5 at a team total. Look, I know they're a good defense, but this team, I think they've scored 40 or more in every game. It's hard to not envision that. I think the only shot Iowa has is to try to sit on the ball and run it and get first downs that way. But I got to tell you, you're right. Abysmal is a great word. I think if you like this game, I would just lean on that to get the 40. I wouldn't try to screw around with the side, but maybe that's a way to look at it. I do want to talk quickly about a game that I don't know if you're going to have much opinion on, but one thing that I'm noticing, this Army team, guys, I think has some issues. I'm just going to say it. They're not that typical kind of, you just bet them and they win 52-10 anymore. They're really struggling, I feel like, to just get up on teams. I thought they even struggled last week against Colgate, who is a non-Division I team. I see them laying a touchdown to UL Monroe, who, I got to admit, I've been impressed with in certain games this year. I'm looking at Army and I'm saying, I don't mind them as a dog or even a really small favorite, but laying a full touchdown, I get some real question marks about Army. I don't think you're going to make a lot of money betting this team to win by margin against Division I competition. It's just not a betting profile that I want to really get involved with. I noticed sharp money came in and took UL Monroe. I think this is a decent spot for this group. I mean, how you got to admit, I'm sure Yale Monroe is pretty excited about this non-conference game in the middle of the season. I thought they came off a really impressive performance last week against South Alabama. They played well against Coastal, played well against and beat Louisiana. I think this Monroe team might be worth a look, +7 early in Mitchie Stadium on Saturday. And they're also very good against the run, Yale Monroe. Just a thought. Any thoughts quickly? Have you noticed Army? They're not that all the military schools this year have been lackadaisical at times.
Yeah, I love Jeff Monken, but their pass defense is just really, really, really bad. I mean, if you got like obviously Wake Forest is an outlier. They're terrific passing the ball, but it doesn't have to be at that level. If you got a guy that can sling the rock a little bit, some decent receivers, they just have no answer for it. And that's when you run that option, and they run option about as good as anybody. But I mean, if you just get up on them, that style of offense, you just can't. Playing from behind is just a recipe for disaster. And I think that's kind of a spot they found themselves in. Even the Coastal game was a little similar, where I think they lost the game like 38-28. It was like a 2 or 3 point spread on the number, but yeah, they're not as quite as good as they have been the last few years. That's for sure.
And that's another astute point by you. That's one thing I always kind of talk about. If you have a pulse at quarterback, you can move the ball against them. And if you're laying 7 on top of it, you go down 10-0. That's a really hard thing to climb out of. Thus, the reason they're not good as a favorite. Keep in mind, last week, Chandler Rogers was very good. 20 pass completions for almost 400 yards. That's pretty impressive. He can come in and move the rock. That just seems like a high-scoring, a close shootout type of game. I do want to put out one other thing about Iowa. Gerard from NYC, great point. You know that kid that plays for Purdue, Charlie Jones?
Yep.
Terrific receiver.
Absolutely.
He's the next great receiver.
Fantastic.
White slot guy. He's the next great one in the NFL. Charlie Jones from Purdue. Remember the name. You know where he played last year?
Iowa.
How does he not? How did we never know who he was? Oh, because he played at Iowa.
He's playing with Petrus.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's so funny. Whenever he has been on fantastic this year. Whenever I picture his name, just that first game when they played in primetime against Penn State, Gus Johnson just kept calling him Chuck Sizzle. And that's all I can think about when I see him. I'm like Chuck Sizzle, but he's a pretty tall guy too. Like even for a slot guy, I haven't looked at his measurements, but just seeing him on the field, he's got to be 6'2", 6'3". I'd imagine he's a pretty big guy.
He's one of the better receivers no one talks about. He's not going to get the love of some of these guys, but he is a sure-handed guy. I liked Purdue last week, and I had the over, and I was worried. I thought he may not play. He was injured, and he ended up playing, and he was a huge that Purdue team. If you see totals in the 50s with them, you should bet it over.
Absolutely.
They throw constantly. Okay. This one jumped out at me. Miami Duke. First of all, I'm not really sure why Miami's an almost double-digit favorite against really anybody. I don't know what they've done to really warrant that. I've said before, I think they have one of the truly worst passing defenses I've seen. I mean, they're really bad. And say what you want about Duke. I mean, this team I thought would be real bad this year. They've definitely surprised me. This is one team I was dead wrong on. They're actually pretty solid. I also see a total in the 50s that I'm not quite sure I'm understanding. Yeah. Duke is a group that like to keep their foot on the gas. Miami has Van Dyke. He's starting to find his way a little bit. They're starting to move the football, and they can't really stop anybody. Did this strike you as a bit high, though? You figured Carolina was laying, 6.5, 7 last week? Didn't cover. I think Carolina and Miami, I guess slight advantage to Miami, but I don't really think they should be a double-digit favorite here.
No, I have no interest in not that I was looking to just jump on Duke, but I had no interest in laying the points in Miami, that's for sure. The total is probably the one that interests me the most. Because I agree with you. I mean, Miami feels like they can't stop anybody, but they've been starting to score a little bit. Like you said, Van Dyke started the season bad. The last, I think, 2 or 3 games, he's actually played well. It was funny because I know that game against Carolina, we were streaming. Dave had a bunch of money in Miami. It was one where Van Dyke, it was funny because obviously your emotions going crazy watching the game where saying he played so bad, but then his numbers were great. I mean, they scored some, but I mean, they can't stop anybody like in this passing attack. They are really bad. See, I probably like the over if I was going to take anything in the game.
I think you have to. I mean, I just want to again make this clear. Miami is allowing every time they complete a pass, 9.3 yards a play. That is shocking. I mean, that's really bad. Army's allowing 10 yards a play for a pass attempt. UL Monroe gets destroyed in the pass. I mean, some of these teams we're talking about are not good defensively against the pass. B-Tam says this duo is literally the best. Thank you. Bring this guy back. We will, for sure. Ev is doing his thing. But yeah, keep an eye on that one. If you could find a 10 out there, I think Duke might be where to look. Total in the 50s. I think you probably have to just play that game over. I'm going to say it again. Another team that should not be laying points right now, Houston. Okay. I've seen this team probably more than anybody that isn't in Houston. There are two things that concern me about this game. First of all, they're not favorite material. Okay. Every game they play is close. Throw in the fact they got to go to Annapolis, which is not easy. And I'll tell you one thing. They had a ton of momentum after beating Memphis the way they did, coming back over the last 4 or 5 minutes. But you know what happened last week, Ev? They had a bye week. Not great for momentum. Dana Holgorsen, I'm going to say this before, and I'm going to say this again. I will not tell you a coach is good when he is not. Dana Holgorsen is not a good coach. He does not prepare his team. It doesn't seem like his team has any real interest in listening to him. They're one of the most penalized teams in the college football. And I'll tell you something I'm learning about this Naval Academy team, who, let me throw in, you were on Navy last week, I saw. I was on Navy, and I threw it out to all of you. It was my favorite play last week. One of the great covers you'll have. That
was all-timer. I mean, no quit. No quit. They're spiking the ball. He even dropped a couple of big passes, too, that almost hindered them. They would have scored even faster.
Absolutely. And listen, if that's Miami doing that, it's like, well, okay, they have a good passing offense, but it's Navy, right? You don't expect it. They had a 4th and 10 to convert. It was great. That was impressive. They're playing some good football too. I thought they were really competitive last week. I thought they did what I thought they'd do. They were very good against Tulsa, beat a pretty good ECU team. They've hung around. They do this every year, and they never quit, ever. I just don't really think Houston should be a favorite. I'm also looking at a total here at 51.5 and wondering why this one's coming down. I think the Naval Academy will move the ball. I think they can get mid-20s here or low 20s. Houston should be able to attack a bad Navy defense. I'll just keep saying it. I don't think Houston should be a favorite.
Yeah, I agree. I like Navy. That was one that jumped out to me too. I'm glad you brought up the most penalized team. I know Dana's a big Barstool guy, so I try to tread a little bit, but he's I don't know what happened. He's just not. He's not it. I'm curious how long he lasts there, but it's been. I mean, because they've had players. I mean, last year they were good. I mean, they have the receiver Dell. I mean, he's fantastic, but yeah, they're just not. I don't know. They're just not it. They just can't put it all together.
What I notice about them is it always seems like anytime they have a big play, it's a stupid penalty. Yep. It's some dumb penalty or some dumb decision that cost them. And, the defense isn't good either. So that kind of compounds it. I think Max Hacker makes a good point. I will say this about Dana. I think he has that look that you're like, wow, you want to root for him because he looks like a guy that you want to root for. He has that kind of Gundy feel to him, right? But
yep.
I think when we're really like peeling the onion and saying like, why do we regard him like we regard him, I guess. And that's really my point. But yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page. Naval Academy at home is tough, very tough. I want to get to UCLA Oregon because this is a game that kind of screams out something to me. And I've been very good with UCLA. I've kind of been able to, I remember when they had those 2 games against Washington and who was it, Utah. I looked at the number and I said, why are they 3-point dogs at home? This doesn't make any sense to me. I think they're the better team than both these groups. They have a veteran quarterback, a coach that's desperate to win. But now I look at it and I say, well, now you're on the road, and this number seems like it's begging you to take the Bruins.
Yes.
I think Oregon wins, and I think they win by double digits. I think this screams, kind of TCU Kansas, where, did TCU cover? I think they or no, not TCU.
Push. It was 7, so it was the line moved. It was kind of like might have pushed, might have won if you're on Kansas.
Yeah, or better yet, Oklahoma, Kansas last week, where I think a lot of people thought, well, I don't want to back Oklahoma. And I don't know if people do you ever really want to back Bo Nix? Because I don't. But
this year's been so interesting with them because obviously they have the first game. they just get their doors blown off by Georgia. Everyone's like, oh, Georgia's going to run away with it. Oregon stinks. And then Oregon since then has looked phenomenal, to give them credit. And even to give Bo Nix credit, I agree with you coming in, but he's played very well the game. Like since then, they have, as a team, they've scored a ton of points. They have played well. I agree with the line screams, as from a betting perspective, like for us, like take Oregon. Like this is why are they 6-point favorites at home? I tend to lean that way. That's also just kind of my gambling philosophy is those lines. When they give you those lines, take them. They didn't really go, and even more. I don't know how much this matters, how much you take this into consideration, but last week a few of those lines didn't go that way, which almost leads me to believe Waters finds its level, that maybe this week they will come back to Oregon wins this game by 10, by 13. So I'll probably be playing Oregon, even though I love DTR. Like I love what they've been. I love Charbonnet. I love Bobo. I love what they've been doing, and it's a shame because they probably are the Pac-12's best chance to make the playoff. But I think this is probably the spot where they fall, and there's no undefeated Pac-12 teams left. But that's just how it goes.
That's what I was hoping you would say. And what's that set up if they lose, right? It's a big mishigas in the Pac-12 about, okay, well, there they are, the Pac-12, same as every year. And we can kind of write them off, right? That's how I feel here. I think you said 10-13. I think this is like a 38-28 type of game. Like I could see that. And I like Oregon, or I like UCLA. I backed them like 3 or 4 different times this year. But I think you have to know as a gambler when it's time to maybe look the other way. And like I'm going to do that with another team here, a game that I know you like here in a second. But you have to know kind of, I think, when to avoid and when to get on. Let's talk about the big game down in the Bayou. You got LSU and Ole Miss. Barstool College Football Show is there. I'll tell you what, you're in a great role in that, by the way. I think that's it's just, I know it always seems like you get the crowd going, and you got Will Compton there occasionally. It's just a great vibe. It's a way better show than that other show. LSU is 2.5-point favorites, and they have been weird to me because I liked them for a while, and then I thought that Auburn performance was just weird. And I wonder if some of those kids really love this organization, this team, guys like Boutte, who we saw in the first game. I think Ole Miss is on fire. I like Ole Miss. Whether I trust Lane Kiffin or not, whether I trust Jackson Dart or not, I continue to watch this team, kind of find ways to win. And they can score. They have a good offense, run and pass. If you're going to give me 2.5 points, I think it's a really close game. I would like 3 here if I can. I won't ultimately be playing this game, but I'm curious about what you think about it. I want Jackson Dart over. You would agree. You have to have Dart over Daniels, don't you?
Daniels he's interesting. He has a little bit of he's got a little bit of that Jekyll and Hyde in him. Like he's got that. Like he's inconsistent, is what I would say. Sometimes he looked good. I would say last week he looked very good. I'll respectfully I kind of like LSU here, and it's not just because I'm going. I don't know. Ole Miss they early in the season. Listen, they've done what they need to do. They've checked the boxes. They've won their games they're supposed to. God bless. But I don't know. There's something when I just watch them, they don't. I'm just not super impressed. I just think I'm not a huge Jackson Dart guy. He's been decent. I don't know. Even Mincy. I was talking to Mincy about it today. Even he's not super confident in the Rebels. I don't know. So LSU is obviously the 2 glaring. Well, actually, I would say 3, even though Auburn, when you brought that up because that was a bad performance, even though they ended up winning the game. Obviously, the first game, Florida State, they have just play about as bad as they can play, and somehow almost beat that team. They get an extra point blocked at the end. Then the Tennessee game obviously is glaring. They fumbled the opening kick. They just fumble early. They just look like an absolute disaster. They get their doors blown off. Tennessee has now proven themselves. Very, very good football team. I think LSU wins this game. I think they win. I think they cover that. I think they win by 3+. I think they show up here. Big environment. I know Mincy brought up as well. He did not think that Dart would fare very well in this environment. He hasn't really had to play in anything like this in his career. And LSU is a different animal. I think if it was a night game, it might be even worse for them. But the atmosphere is nuts. I think the fan base, the LSU fan base, is now back fully behind this team. Big win against Florida last week. So I like LSU. I think LSU will be on my card. I think I'll be playing LSU.
Yeah, I won't be anywhere near it, but I think you made a really good point about Dart. He's that kid. He's at USC, and he's never played in a game like this. Throw in the fact that if you really look at Ole Miss, Troy, Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech,
Yep.
Tulsa, Kentucky, which nice win, but it wasn't easy. Vandy gave up 28 in that game, and then really struggled last week against a hideous Auburn team who has quit on their coach. So
Yep.
this could be a real kind of slap in the face, possibly. I think when you kind of break it down the way you did, it makes sense they're a 2.5-point favorite. I don't know. It's a mess. I'm not taking it. I'm not playing it. I wish anybody that plays it good luck. It's a very tough football game to me.
And also, I will just say
yeah.
this quick too, because you mentioned the Boots thing earlier. I think he's like, if you noticed the game last week, he had a big game last week. I think he's back from that first game against Florida State where he's running around. He's not even looking for the ball. He looks checked out. He looks like he doesn't care. Looks lost. They were talking about him deleting LSU stuff off of social media.
Mm-hmm.
I know he actually just had a kid a couple weeks ago. He missed the game. He's back. I think he looks rejuvenated. I think the team is kind of starting to buy into Brian Kelly, and yes, that's another big part of it too. I think they're kind of just like, I think they're back in. I think they're looking forward to what they can do.
Right, and you need that. Eventually they're going to start buying in. Eventually they're going to start. That's his culture down there now. I want to talk about Penn State, Minnesota. Okay, I've got to tell you, I like Sean Clifford personally. Is he the best quarterback in the world? No. I think he's a pretty good version on a team that really, since I was a kid, has not had a good quarterback. They just don't really have them much. They've had a couple, Michael Robinson or Kerry Collins, but not many. And I think when I look at Penn State, I've been impressed with how good they are on defense. They've been great against the pass. Minnesota, you talk about a team that went, and I think has made it clear they were a complete fraud. They played nobody in the first 3 or 4 weeks. You look at since then, played Purdue, lost. Last week played Illinois. I mean, Morgan was horrific.
Yeah.
Awful. 4 for 10, or 4 for 12, 21 yards. And Ev, this was one of my only losses last week, just a real slap in the face. I had under 39.5. It fell 40. He had 21 passing yards and the game went over. I look at 44.5 and I say to myself, how do they move the ball in this game? It's a road game in Penn State. I think it's another very tough game in Minnesota offensively. They really have nothing outside of Ibrahim. They don't have that Rashad Bateman type of receiver. They're very one-dimensional on offense. And I look at Minnesota's defense. I know they weren't great last week, but I still think they're a really good defensive team. I think they are going to struggle, though, a little bit with those receivers that Penn State has. I'm looking at this number coming down, and I'm saying to myself, I don't know if I really agree with it. I think Penn State wins, and I think they're a significantly better team than Minnesota. I also like the under 44.5.
Yeah, I like Penn State in the bounce back spot. I think sometimes especially just casual bettors, and then they get too caught up in, especially in the NFL, but happens in college as well, where they see one, obviously, Michigan looks, as much as I hate Michigan, they're a very good football team. They have a phenomenal offensive line. They can just eat you up, shoot and spit you out. So, I mean, I think that's kind of what happened. They just ran the ball down their throat. I mean, it didn't matter who was carrying the ball. They were getting big chunks. I don't think, as good as like you said, Ibrahim's a good running back, I don't think Minnesota's going to go in there and do that to them. I like Penn State in the bounce back. I think they could easily win this game by a touchdown, 10 points. I don't think that's crazy.
Well, no, and I think, another great comment from Girardi says, I think you get a discount with Penn State after the loss. And you hit it on the head, that recency bias. People are way too worried. Look, to compare Minnesota and Michigan, it's not even close. I mean, they're totally different teams. Throw in the fact that, have you been to Beaver Stadium before?
I have. Great environment. Very good environment.
You know the kind of environment that is. Yeah. It's just incredible. Penn State, jumped up a couple notches and they got their clocks clean. That said, this is still a really good football team. And I just like everything Penn State does. I think they have one of the better secondaries in America. Yeah. I think you just stack the box and say, hey, Tanner Morgan beat us. And I don't think they can beat them. So I think 4 is a good play. I think the under is a good play too. I could see it being like a, 27-13 type of game. I could see that.
Yeah. Sure.
And the pace ain't going to be there either.
No.
Ev, you sent in some really good games that I asked you about a couple of games you liked, and one of the games that I'm really curious what you think about this game: Clemson and Syracuse. Clemson's laying 13.5. Ev, I've said before, I've said this for weeks. Clemson is a Final Four team. It's that simple. They're really good. They're the change in coordinator to Brandon Streeter has been huge for DJ. You look at his touchdown numbers, his interception numbers, his efficiency numbers. Everything about DJ is, just better. Their offense is better. Their defense is very good. I'm just going to keep saying it. Cuse is cool. I had a huge win with them against Purdue. It was incredible. I know they won last week, but I really believe this is a fucking spot where they just get pounded. I think Clemson's just on another level. I think this is where Dino Babers just gets supremely outcoached. I think there's maybe people say, oh, the number's a little too high, but I could really game 34-14. I really could.
Jeff, I've had Clemson minus 13 locked in since I believe Tuesday or Wednesday morning. I think I agree with you 100%. I think this is a bow race. I think this is Syracuse leaving the Carrier Dome, going down to Death Valley. It's a different animal, different defensive line, different everything. And I think this is where you just kind of like almost little similar. I think maybe even a bigger gap potentially than Michigan, Penn State. I think this is just like a rout. I think they like I wouldn't be shocked if this game is like 42-17. Like I think they just go blow their doors off. Maybe not that high scoring, we'll see, but I just don't think they have anything for him. I don't think I like Babers as like a guy. I don't think he's like a great coach. I think they like some of those wins, like you brought up the Purdue game, they were lucky as hell to get out with a win there. Even Virginia, they were lucky to get out with a win, which is crazy. Virginia's not good at all. I think they've been a great story. It's funny because I've been saying this at Pick Central. I get a bunch of Syracuse guys in my DMs being like, oh, like, give us some respect, give us some credit. I'm like, listen, great story. Happy for you guys. Like 6-0, great job. Like, definitely much better than I thought you were going to be. Clemson ain't losing again. Clemson's not losing in the regular season again. The games they could have lost, they would have lost already. I think they're going to run the table. I agree with you. They're a Final Four team. I'd be shocked if they weren't. I don't see where they lose again. Besides in a game like that, maybe ACC championship game. Even that, I don't really see it. I think this is an absolute rout. I love Clemson.
When I saw 20-1 a couple of weeks ago, I thought that's just too high. And they beat Wake or whoever it was, and they went down to 10-12-1. There's a couple of things that I want to just mention. Sean Tucker, like good running back. I like Sean Tucker for Syracuse. You're not getting shit against Clemson's defensive line. No. You're just not. And their passing defense, I know that people will point to the Wake game, but outside of that, they've been incredible.
Listen, I think Schrader and them, they ain't right. Sam Hartman. That's
exactly. That's 100% game. 100% right. I couldn't agree with you more. I also want to say quickly about fandom, which I notice in college football is I don't have a team. Okay. I don't really, the only team I actually truly care about is the Eagles, and that's it. I think there's people that we should be a little bit more cognizant of remembering, guys, that we're gamblers, right? So we just give our opinions. If I came under and said I liked every team every week, it wouldn't be that fun, right? So, and I have it too. I'll have people like, why don't you give this team respect? Why? And it's like, well, I can't give everybody respect, or respect wouldn't mean anything, would it? I'm not going to come out and say, like, I just think Clemson is on another level than Syracuse. That's not to say I'm not proud of Syracuse. Like, beating Purdue the way it was incredible. I had a huge win off that. I remember it. But I think as a gambler, you have to be willing to say, you know what? I just don't think this is a good spot. And you made the point of just the athleticism, the speed. It's just a different type of team. And going to Death Valley is tough. Will Shipley, it's tough. I agree 100%. K-State TCU. This is another game that I'm excited about talking about. I'm going to tell you this. This is a stone cold Wildcat spot, and I will be on K-State here. Yep. TCU has been cute as well. Nice 6-0 record. I love it. This is the week of the undefeateds go down. TCU, UCLA, Syracuse. Are they still undefeated? Yes.
Yeah.
It's the day of undefeateds. Let me tell you something about TCU. The run offense is incredible. If you'd have told me a Sonny Dykes team would be the best rush team in America, I'd have told you no way. But this K-State team, there's something fickle about this group. There's something fickle about that really good run defense and that secondary and that Chris Kleiman defense. I believe they're off a bye as well. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I'm going to check here. I can't make sure I have everything in front of me here, but let me double check here. Yes, they are off a bye. Last game they played was against Iowa State. I had a barn burner play on 1.5, and it came in. I like K-State here, Ev. I like Adrian Martinez. He's an advantage over everything they've had in the past. I think TCU goes down. And, the truth is, if you can move the ball against them and then you can stop the run, how do they score and they're not going to stop you. TCU can't stop anybody. K-State wins this game.
Yeah, I'm glad. That's why I sent it in. That's why when I sent it in, I had K-State plus 3.5. That love the play. I think they went outright. I mean, honestly, ton of credit to Adrian Martinez, a guy who just everyone saw the talent he had, just always the turnovers and the fumbles, interceptions. I'll knock on wood for him now. I might be jinxing him. I believe he hasn't thrown an interception this year. He's been just incredible. I mean, him and Deuce Vaughn, I don't know what they're going to do trying to stop that run game. And listen, TCU, I like TCU. I like Duggan. Like, he's a great quarterback. He's played phenomenally well. That receiver Johnson is he's incredible. Absolute number one with the dreads, just monster receiver. I mean, they were incredibly lucky to get out with a win last week against Oklahoma State. I think this is where the chickens come to roost. I agree with you 100%. Kansas State, I think, plus 3.5 big. Sprinkled some money line as well. Double up on it. I think Kansas State gets it done.
Let me tell you something, too, about K-State. Malik Knowles, Phillip Brooks, very good receivers. I owe Malik Knowles some kind of dinner or something, because did you see against Iowa State when he dropped the ball right before he got to the goal line?
Yes,
did you
of course.
See that?
I was on Iowa State.
Same. Yeah, it was huge. It was a huge spot. And I mean, K-State had 200-yard receivers in that game. They only scored 10 points. It was a barn burner. It wasn't a barn burner, but it was necessary. Glad we agree on that one as well. I'm curious about this last game that we're going to talk about, and then we'll get your Yankees thought and we'll get out of here. Kansas Baylor. I have to say, I was on Oklahoma last week. I thought it was just a good spot for them. But I was impressed with Jason Bean. I thought he looked really good. It just seems like Kansas, there's just a different team, man, with Lance Leopold. But I've made a comment about Kansas, and it may come to fruition. People thought I was nuts. They thought I was Ubats, if you will. I said Kansas will not be bowl eligible. I did. They're only at 5 wins, and they will be a dog in every game the rest of the season. I'm telling you, I don't think they're going to win another game. That said, I think this game's close. It seemed high to me. I'm curious if you're going to say over here, because this number is plummeted. It was 63.5. It's now 58.5. You're getting the best number if you like the over. Do you like the over?
I do. I don't with this Kansas team. I'm glad you brought up the Jason Bean, because I mean, their offense hasn't really skipped a beat. I mean, even in that second half against TCU, he throws 4 touchdown passes. Oklahoma, they obviously, listen, their defense couldn't stop anybody, but they scored a ton themselves. I mean, I think Baylor's a solid team. I don't think they're fantastic. I mean, this is a game where the type of games that Kansas plays, I'm stunned that the number's so low. Like, I see 58.5, and I'm like, how do they both don't score 30? Like, I'm like, how does this game at a minimum not end up like 35-28? It's just Kansas. I think is good enough offense that besides like elite defenses, which I don't think Baylor's defense is elite. I mean, they're going to get theirs, and they're going to give up a ton of yards. They're going to give up yards. They're going to give up points. I would lean Kansas as well with the points, 9.5. But I think the over. I mean, I'm going to be playing the over. I just don't see. Maybe I'm the sucker, but I don't see why it's so low. I just really don't.
Well, the thing is, if you played the over 63, you might be a sucker, but you're not. You're playing 58.5. This could fall 31-30. Absolutely. Let me say one thing about overs. Okay, and this is why I would play this game over as well. You're going to have pace in this game. I think Kansas likes to go up and down. They don't stop anybody.
Yeah.
I look a lot at TD percentage, touchdown percentage. If you are playing overs in college and you're not focusing on how often a team scores a touchdown in the red zone, because kickers are so inept, you're hurting yourself. All year, Kansas has been a top team in the red zone. You look at on the season, 35 red zone attempts. They have 28 touchdowns. Playing along at home, that's 80%. That's very high. That's top 10. Baylor also, I think they're 71%. Both very good in the red zone at putting the ball in the end zone. You need 7, not 3 or 0. To me, I agree with you. I think you're on to something here. Maybe even goes a little lower. You get 57.5 or something. Too low. I agree. I'll tell you this: the best player on the board to me, I agree. I think it's Clemson. I think we rock with that. I played that. I've gotten these right the last couple weeks. I will have some blogs that as well. Those are continuing to do well. Follow all of Ev's plays. He puts out a lot more volume than me, which I respect. Anybody that could put out the volume that you do and have the success you do, I think you have to be proud of that. It's not hard to win 2 or 3 out of 4, but you put out 20 games and you win 12 or 13. That's hard to do. So make sure you check out Ev's college stuff. Ev, do you have a favorite of any of these? Do you have one that just jumps out at you?
Honestly, those 3, we just talked about the 3 I sent you. Those are my 3 favorites: Clemson, Kansas State, the Baylor, Kansas over. Those are probably the 3 that I like the most. Yeah, honestly, all 3 of those I like pretty.
Yeah, I agree.
Pretty
I like that one as well. I think Oregon is a really good spot. I just be fair and honest. And then tonight, I think South Alabama. Listen, if I'll tell you right now, I don't buy points. I think it's a very rare instance, but if I could get a 2.5, 120, I would buy it here. This could be 24-21. I'm not in the business to push. I'm in to win. But I like South Alabama. I think it's a big game for them tonight. Before we go, Ev, and I want to say a lot of good comments in here. I think Barstool and I've always said this. I think Barstool needs this sort of thing. I really do. I really enjoy talking about this kind of stuff, and you're an astute guy. I want to leave this though with a Yankee question here. The Yankees obviously last night go down. They're down 1-0. I hate to say it, but I got to tell you, Ev, I think this is where the season ends for the New York Yankees. Tonight, though, they have Luis Severino on the mound against Framber Valdez, the lefty, who I thought during the season was terrific. It's not that I don't like the Yankees. I think their lineup's great. I love what they do. I don't know. I don't like Aaron Boone. I just look at Houston. I think they're better really at every level. What do you think about tonight? Do you come back with the Yankees here to tie it up?
I hope so. It's funny with people that I'm not somebody who just bets the Yankees blindly because I'm a Yankees fan. If you noticed that, I didn't bet them yesterday. I'm not betting them today. I'll be rooting for them crazy. We're doing a watch party at American Whiskey. Me, Hubs, Marty, Tommy. So check that out, Frankie.
Beautiful.
So check that out, the live stream. Or if you're in NYC, come to American Whiskey on West 30th. I don't know. Listen. They've had our number, especially in Houston. A lot of these crazy series we had with them, has been the home teams winning games. And unfortunately, they have more home games in this series than we do. This is the big swing game, because if we could win tonight and get back to the Bronx with Garrett Cole and Nestor going 3-4, I feel very good about where we're at. Very, very good.
You have to.
Now that's a tall task. Winning the game tonight, very tall task. Framber, I agree, he's been fantastic. He's let up literally 1 home run to a lefty all season. Not that we have a ton of lefties, but we obviously play some. You got to mix it up in the majors. I played the over actually small. I played over 7. I think there should be some runs in this game. Severino, so he's been inconsistent in the playoffs. He had some good outings. He had some not so good outings. Listen, Houston's really good. The difference is from the playing the Guardians is their 8-9 hitters are like automatic. Hedges and Straw like automatic outs. You look at this lineup for Houston. Last night McCormick batting 8th, home run. Maldonado, the catcher, batting 9th, RBI double. They got guys hit up and down the lineup. And the problem with us is right now, the only guys that have really been hitting well are Bader, that's been terrific, a guy we traded for. And then Rizzo's been terrific. Judge he's had a couple home runs. He hasn't been great. The lineup just hasn't. I've said it with this Yankees team for the last few years. We're too home run reliant, and that just, I don't know how that just hasn't fared that well in the playoffs for us. We seem to we keep getting to this spot and then get knocked out. I'm hoping this year's different. I think the pitching's a little better than it has been. At least the starting pitching's been a little better. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned.
You look at Framber Valdez, 201 innings. He's given up 11 home runs. That is
unreal.
That's something. And that's something I talked about during the season. They are 2 home run reliant. You also have a nails bullpen if you're Houston. I got to tell you, I like Houston here personally, but I think, the Yankees, if you can get a hold of one or two. But then again, I liked the Phillies yesterday. San Diego found something in that one inning, and that was huge. Two things before we go quickly. I did not know, who does Ev have in the UFC main event, which we talked about. He says he leans Islam, but is not on it. Let me ask you, though, if I told you that Hasbullah was in his corner, would that make you more interested?
He's won with him in his corner in the past. I think it was his last one or maybe the one before. He literally, after he had Hasbullah in the cage, lifting him up like Simba.
Yep.
Listen, Hasbullah is a gamer. He brings an edge that I guess Charles is gonna have with him. But I'm a big Hasbullah guy, so I'm glad he just signed with the UFC.
Did you see him taking pictures? The UFC pictures?
Yeah, with his fight kit, with his gloves on and the shorts and everything.
Great stuff.
He's a guy you don't want to run into on the street.
No,
he's a tough dude.
I would pay a lot of money to have him punch me in the face just once. I just want it. Real quick, someone's asked about Boise Air Force. The astute better I am. I took Boise at 4. It's down to 2. I'm telling you, Ev, keep an eye on that Bronco group. I know their offense didn't get going for a while, but Dirk Cutter, the injection of him, and Taylon Green, that is a really good football team. I think Air Force gets caught napping a little bit. I think it's a close game. I like Boise.
Because what I think it was with Bachmeier, they had this highly touted throwing quarterback, and I think they felt like they just had to throw the ball, and they finally just started running the ball, and they're running it down people's throats. Yeah, and I think that's been the difference.
Dude, they had no points in that San Diego State game. Going to the fourth quarter, dropped 35, and from then on, they've just rolled. And they have a great defense, too. Ev, this was incredible, man. I love talking to you. You're great, very astute. I think people enjoyed it. Let people know where to find you if they're living under a rock and they don't know who you are. And hopefully we talk to you again soon. Have you on again soon.
For sure, absolutely. I had a blast. At Double Vodka Don, Twitter, Instagram. Watch the Yankees live stream tonight with all Barstool platforms. College football show Saturday morning, or it'll be Eastern time, I believe, 1:30 for our Eastern time, 3:30 kickoff. Very excited. I think the atmosphere is going to be nuts there. Fred's the bar down there. It's kind of like their legendary Tigerland bar. They've been putting up signs and stuff. They seem very excited for us to come down there. They rolled out the red carpet for Megan and Mincy and for Dan and PFT and everybody. So it's going to be an awesome weekend. Honestly, just one of the better weekends of sports of the year. When he's like you said, you got college football, got NFL this weekend, huge UFC card, NBA basketball, hockey, everything this weekend.
There really is something for everybody. Absolutely. Ev, safe trip, have fun. Go check Ev out on the College Football Show this Saturday at LSU. Ev, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It was a great time.
Appreciate it. All right, guys, that's that for the show. As always, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week. Make sure if you haven't, you like and subscribe before you go. Also, remember, in about an hour, Brandon fucking Walker's coming up with his College Football Show. Make sure you check that out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week here on Big Men on Betting. We're close to college basketball. We'll start implementing that as well. Maybe we'll be on here a little bit more frequently. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you next week here on Big Men on Betting.